Most people think rich people live completely different lives, different opportunities, different luck, different intelligence, and sometimes that's true, but honestly, the biggest difference between people who build wealth and people who stay broke often comes down to something much smaller than that habits. Tiny daily behaviors repeated quietly over years, because wealth usually isn't built in one dramatic moment. It's built in what people repeatedly do when nobody is watching. Think about two people with the exact same salary, same city, same job, same starting point. One slowly builds savings, investments, and financial freedom. The other constantly feels stressed about money. And from the outside, their lives can look almost identical for years. That's what makes this so interesting. Because broke habits rarely look dangerous in the moment, and rich habits rarely look exciting in the beginning, but over time, the gap becomes massive. Let's start with one of the biggest differences. Rich habits focus on ownership. Broke habits focus on appearance. A lot of people spend money trying to look successful before they actually become financially secure. Better car, latest phone, designer clothes, luxury upgrades, and social media makes this even worse. Every day people see vacations, expensive dinners, perfect apartments, luxury lifestyles. So naturally, people start spending emotionally to keep up, not because they truly need those things, but because humans constantly compare themselves to others, and comparison quietly destroys financial progress. Because wealthy thinking asks, will this improve my future? Broke thinking asks, how will this make me feel right now? That's a huge psychological difference. Rich habits prioritize delayed gratification, broke habits prioritize immediate comfort, and modern life makes this extremely difficult. Everything today is built around instant dopamine, one-click shopping, food delivery, buy now, pay later, instant entertainment. Your brain gets rewarded immediately, while the financial consequences show up later. That's why emotionally, spending feels good now. And saving feels boring now, but financially, the boring habits usually win long term. Let's make this relatable. Imagine two people after a stressful week at work. One says, I deserve this. So they impulse shop, order expensive takeout, and spend emotionally for relief. The other person still enjoys life, but pauses before spending. Not because they're cheap, because they understand something important. Every pound spent today has a hidden future value. That $100 impulse purchase isn't just $100 invested over time. It could become hundreds more later. Rich habits think long-term, broke habits think emotionally. And this doesn't mean wealthy. People never spend money. That's not the lesson. The real lesson is intentionality, financially. Smart people spend consciously. Financially struggling people often spend automatically. That difference changes everything. Here's another major difference. Rich habits build assets. Broke habits build liabilities. Most people spend years working for money without ever buying things that work for them in return. Income comes in and immediately flows back out. Bills, subscriptions, car payments, lifestyle upgrades, and after years of hard work, nothing meaningful is growing quietly in the background. That's exhausting psychologically, because when your entire life depends on your next paycheck, you never fully relax financially. But rich habits slowly create ownership, investments, ETFs, retirement accounts, assets that grow quietly over time. And here's the interesting part. At first, this looks boring. Nobody gets excited watching an ETF slowly grow. Nobody posts patient investing online. Social media celebrates visible spending, not invisible wealth building. That's why broke habits often feel more exciting emotionally. But rich habits create something much more valuable later. Freedom. The freedom to leave toxic jobs. The freedom to handle emergencies calmly. The freedom to stop panicking before payday. Now let's talk about another huge difference. Rich habits track money. Broke habits avoid money. A lot of people are emotionally afraid to look at their finances honestly. They avoid bank apps, ignore statements, delay checking balances not because they're lazy, because money stress creates emotional discomfort, but avoidance creates invisible problems, and invisible problems grow. Financially successful people usually develop awareness early. They know where money goes, what they spend emotionally on what habits quietly drain them. That awareness changes behavior automatically. Because once people clearly see patterns, they stop spending unconsciously. Most people don't realize how much disappears through subscriptions, delivery apps, small impulse purchases, convenience spending, tiny leaks repeated daily quietly. shape financial outcomes. And this is where psychology becomes important because broke habits often come from emotional coping, stress spending, boredom spending, comparison spending. People buy things to feel. Comfort relief status escape, and companies understand this perfectly. That's why modern apps make spending frictionless. Tap, swipe, done. The easier spending feels, the less your brain notices it. Rich habits interrupt this automation. They pause before spending, not forever. Not obsessively, just enough to ask, do I actually need this? Will this matter next week? Am I buying this emotionally? Those tiny pauses save people thousands over time. Now here's something deeper most people never realize. Rich habits usually look boring at first, and broke habits usually look fun at first. That's the trap. Investing quietly? Boring driving an older car? Boring skipping unnecessary upgrades? Boring, but financial stress? Also boring. The difference is rich habits create boring peace. Broke habits create exciting stress. And eventually, peace wins. Now let's talk about time. Rich habits respect time. Broke habits underestimate it. Financially successful people understand compounding emotionally. Not just mathematically, they understand that. Small habits, small investments, small improvements, repeated consistently over years, create massive outcomes. Most people massively underestimate what small actions become over time. 100 invested monthly feels small today, but over decades, it can become hundreds of thousands. The same thing happens negatively too. Small bad habits repeated long enough quietly become financial disasters. That's why habits matter so much, because your future is hidden inside your routines. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean wealthy people never enjoy life. That's not the goal. The goal of rich habits isn't restriction, it's alignment, spending intentionally on things that genuinely improve life, while avoiding unconscious spending that quietly steals future freedom. That's a huge difference. And honestly, many wealthy people live surprisingly simple lives. Not because they can't afford more, because they value freedom more than appearances. That's one of the biggest wealth lessons nobody teaches. Looking, rich and being wealthy are completely different things. One is appearance, the other is ownership. One impresses strangers, the other creates peace. And peace is one of the most underrated forms of wealth in existence. So if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. Financial freedom is rarely built through one giant breakthrough. It's usually built quietly. Through small repeated decisions people barely notice day to day, because your habits are quietly building your future, whether you realize it or not.